No matter how bad the preaching is, the music is always good. Not that it's going to be bad today, but just want to give you a heads up. The music is always good. I always think it's funny when somebody says that. How was church today? Oh, it was good. Or the music was good. So I think it's so funny. I've grown so much spiritually and matured so much for being 36 over the last few years that I've come to the point to just be in community with people, to like come to church, be the church with some people, hear God's word spoken. It's always good. And so I hope we can all get to that, because I spent the majority of my life hating going to church, because church was the building. That's kind of what we're going to talk about today. And it's not going to be long. Oh, sorry. I made a concession to Mike that I would tuck my shirt in. That's about as far as I'm going with dressing up. We're going to look at, we're going to be in Luke 15 most of the time. So if you guys have a Bible, you can turn there and just kind of stay there. I'm only going to skim over a couple of other verses, but I want to tell you there's two different things. Number one, if you're new to the Interchange, if this is your first time or you've just been a couple of times, we're excited you're here. We didn't say that when I made the announcements. So the bathrooms are back there. There's free food and drinks out there. And we don't expect anything from you other than for you to connect with Jesus. Like, that's all we want. Now, if you are in the Interchange, if you consider yourself part of this family, we have these crazy things, I know, don't freak out, called tithe and offering boxes in the front, on the walls. They're all over the place. So I'm only saying that if you're part of the Interchange family, contrary to what you may have been told in the past, it is not okay not to give. You should be giving your time, your money, anything. But you should be pouring back into the church. This church does some really good things. For you guys that are new, the Interchange, everything that comes in, they take 10% and it goes right back out. I've used it for people I work with. I've seen it help people. So just know that the money that comes into this church goes back out and really does some good. And I've seen it abused in the past, and this church is definitely not doing that. So I want to jump right in. In Luke 15, the tax collectors, starting in verse 1, tax collectors and other notorious sinners came often to listen to Jesus teach. This made the Pharisees and the teachers of religious law complain that he was associating with such despicable people, even eating with them. So you see two things here. You see one, you see people going to church, and you see Jesus being the church. And that's kind of where we're going to camp out today. It's so funny. Growing up, I felt obligated to go to church. My mother said, hey, if you're going to be good, you have to go to church. And then if you hear pretty much anybody, when they first become a Christian, they think that, wow, now I've just got to read my Bible, I've got to pray, I've got to do this checklist of things, then I'll be a good Christian. So that's what these Pharisees are, these teachers of religious law. They were going to church, they were doing the system, they were checking their boxes, and then Jesus comes along and he starts actually being the church, doing the work, getting his hands dirty, and it freaked them out, and they hated him for it, eventually killed him for it. So you don't have to feel obligated to do something when you're passionate about something. I think if you take one word out of the whole Bible, if you take the gospel, the one word that sticks out to me is passion. Because if you have passion for something, nobody has to make you do anything. I think of the movie Mel Gibson made a few years ago. It wasn't a movie called The Boring Life of some religious guy that had pretty good morals, lived a decent life, and eventually died for some losers. No. It was called The Passion of the Christ, because he's passionate for us. So, Jesus was passionate. If we're going to be followers of him, and if we're supposed to reflect him, we should be passionate too. And so, I want to tell you a funny story about passion, because, like I said, when you're passionate, you don't have to make somebody do something. You don't feel obligated. You do it because you love that person. So whatever they're doing, you want to do. Wherever they're going, you want to go. You want to be just as passionate about them as they are for you. Well, when Holly and I first met, she was going to aerobics, and she was in pretty good shape. I was running marathons, and so she thought that was on the same level as running a marathon. And I thought, well, that's great. Well, I was really passionate about Holly, so I wanted to spend all my time with her. What can I do with Holly to spend time with her? Well, I had this great idea. I've got to get rid of this chair. I had this great idea that said, why don't you let me train you to run a marathon? This is going to be awesome. We can run together all the time. If you don't know what a marathon is, it's 26.2 miles, start to finish. So I thought, man, if we're training, that's hours and hours of running. I'm going to spend a lot of time with her. For sure, she's going to fall in love with me. It was my little sinister plan. So we start training. Now, we're training in the middle of winter. It's freezing cold outside, which Holly loves. She hates being hot. She hates running in the heat. She hates running, period. But she definitely didn't want to run in the heat. So we thought, well, we'll train in the winter for this marathon, and then we'll run it in February. It's still going to be cold. It's going to be in Nashville. It's going to be awesome. She's like, great, okay. Every morning we would get up like 5. It was before work. We would get up and we would meet religiously, and we would run, and she would put in the miles. And I can't express enough how much she hates running. But she was obviously passionate about me, so she was doing what I wanted to do. She was doing things so she could spend time with me. Well, we train all winter. She does really well in the training. Built up the mileage. It was no big deal. So we were ready to go. So we go up to Nashville. We get there. The very morning of the race, there's a heat wave that has hit Nashville. And it's like the hottest temperature they've ever had in Nashville in February. It was like a record high. Not only that, Holly wakes up with maybe her monthly friend that likes to visit that makes my life miserable sometimes. So she wakes up. She is not in the best mood, and she's not feeling very well. And from what I'm told, maybe there's some cramps that come along with this kind of thing. I don't know. But she is definitely not in any position to want to run. Very upset, emotional. So we get up, we go, and you have to leave early. It's like 4 o'clock in the morning. They take you one place, they bus you to another place. You're sitting out there in the cold. Then they pick you up in another bus. They take you back to another place. The whole time, she is miserable. And I'm thinking to myself, this is the best thing ever. This is awesome. We're spending so much time together. This is going to be so much fun. Now, at the time, we were still dating. I didn't realize that she had a visitor. So I just thought, wow, she's acting kind of funny. So anyway, now we had been running a specific pace, like training to run a specific pace. I told her, it's not about time. It's not about winning. I just want to spend time with you. I'll run at your pace. It's going to be great. You just go as fast as you want to go, and I'll just trot along with you. No big deal. Well, we get there, and now I am passionate about a ton of things, not just one. And when I'm passionate about it, I mean I am passionate about it. I learned who all the top runners are, what's the best shoes. It's crazy. It's really ridiculous. I need some help. But we get to Nashville, and I see these elite runners, and they're doing their marathon trials for the Olympics. And I'm like telling Holly, this is who this is. This is who that is. They're up in the front. Now, they mark you. There's thousands of people that run in these things. So they give you a specific color, and you go back, in that line for that pace. So if you're going to run like a 10-minute mile, you would go back to a certain color, and that group kind of runs together. Well, all the elite runners, they go up front because this is their trials to qualify for the Olympics. So I have this great idea. I'm like, Holly, wouldn't it be awesome if we snuck up front? We could see these runners, and when they take off, we could kind of run with them a little bit. For sure, they'll be filming them. We'll be on TV. It's going to be awesome. Well, she's like, yeah, that's great. Fine. Now, she doesn't realize what this means at the time. So we get up to the front. We sneak our way in through all these people. I'm like looking at all these guys. I'm so excited. Well, they fire off the little gun, and I shoot out like a cannon. And Holly's right along with me. She doesn't know anything other than to keep up with me because I'm pacing her. That's what I told her. I'll run it at your pace so you'll know what your time is supposed to be. So she's keeping up with me. Well, we probably ran the fastest 5K in the history of training for a marathon. For sure, Holly's fastest 5K ever. Well, the problem is there's 23 miles left to go. So we're at the first marker, and we're taking off sweatshirts. Holly's crying already, and I'm thinking this is going to be a bad idea. So we spent I'm not kidding. She was such a trooper. I mean, such a trooper because knowing now that she had a visitor and that she was in such a bad condition, And to run that fast out of the gate, not pace ourselves at all, she pushed through and ran the whole time. Now, there was times where she broke down. Crying. We had to ice her leg. She really had to battle her way through it. But because she loved me so much, because she was so passionate about it, because I was passionate about it, not so much that she liked it, she just knew I was. She toughed it out, and she made it all the way through. Finished her marathon, 26.2 miles. Of course, at the end, she said, "Do not ever ask me to do this again." But she did it. That's passion. That's a great example of passion. She doesn't care anything about running. She does it because I loved it, and she loved me. Same thing with all this MMA, UFC stuff. I'm crazy about it. She hates it. But she will trot along wherever we go. If I fight, if I compete, if we're just watching it, she'll go and do it. And she just told me this the other day. I don't even like this stuff. I'm like, what? I had a total freak out. Who are you? I don't even know you. But she said, I do it because I love you. I'm passionate about you. So if you do it, I want to go and be there so I can enjoy it with you. And it makes me happy when I see you enjoying it. And so I thought, wow, what a great example. I'm going to use that. So what was Jesus passionate about? That's kind of what we're going to talk about. You can stay in Luke 15, but you always see the signs go up at a football game, the John 3:16. I always laugh because I have no idea what that means about football. I really don't understand why people hold up John 3:16. Although I did see a funny sign the other day. If you've seen the Antoine Dodson song that's on iTunes, on Facebook, like the guy in Huntsville that's talking about there's a rapist in Lincoln Park. Well, the other day on ESPN, I saw a sign that said, "Hide your Gators, hide your this, hide your that. Alabama's raping everybody up in here." So, and I was going to get Ivy, actually, I dropped the ball. I was going to get him to play kind of a parody of that song today for the message, but it didn't work out. Maybe next time. So what does the John 3:16 verse say? It says that God so loved the world that he gave his only son, that whoever or whosoever or whatever your translation says, believes in him would have eternal life. He's passionate about the whosoevers. The whoever's. That's what we should be passionate about. If we really get to the bottom of what it all means to be a Christian, what did Jesus die for? He died for lost people. And so we as a church, if we're going to follow him, we have to be passionate about lost people. Now, I know there's a tendency to say, wow, he's about to start saying, I've got to witness, I've got to tell people about Jesus, I've got to do this. It's really not my gift. I'm really not feeling led. I'm really not being called to tell people about Jesus. Well, if you already believe in Jesus, if you've already accepted his sacrifice and you're following him, then you've already been called to do that. So if you don't think you've been called to share Jesus, to go out and find somebody and tell them about Jesus, then you're right. You're probably not called to do that. Because being called to do that means you're being a Christian because you're following Jesus. So I would have to say you're right. You're probably not called to do that. And only Jesus knows your heart, but if I had to look at it from an outside perspective, I would say you're probably not a Christian. I don't know how you could be a follower of Jesus and not have any concern for lost people. That's the number one thing he died for. That's the number one thing he left us here for. If you go into John 17, which you don't have to get it on the screen, he's praying to God right before he goes to the cross, and he says, hey, I don't want to take them out of the world. This is the whole reason I'm dying.